My name is Dennis. This story happened to me almost 3 months ago. I used to be married to a girl named Linda. Linda and I were going through a very tough divorce. Mainly because, Linda's temper was always too much for me to handle. Too controlling, even. I couldn't exactly describe how it came to be like this, but it was the way that it was. For no apparent reason, she went on a temper tantrum for no reason over the littlest things. A couple months later into the relationship, things blew up when she got pregnant. She started threatening me, saying that if I ever tried to leave her, that she would kill our baby. I started to think that this was going to be a very intense ride and that I needed to prepare myself for the worst. Eventually, when the baby came, things calmed down a little bit. Fast forward a year later, and her temper tantrums and anger issues skyrocketed again. It was completely out of nowhere. I didn't know how to handle it. It got to the point where she would wake the baby up at night over how loud she was screaming. She was very controlling and never really let me do anything without her knowing. Like, literally, there was nothing I could do in that house without her knowing. It was like having a parent living with me instead of a wife. It was completely insanity. It got to the point where I just couldn't handle it anymore and told her that we were through. And when I told her that, she went crazy. She started picking up random objects and throwing them at me. I told her that this needed to stop and look at yourself, that these issues that you're causing is too much for me to bear. Even the baby is having problems sleeping at night because of you. She, of course, blamed everything on me. That's what she usually did. She never did like to take responsibility for her own actions. I decided right then and there that I had enough and left out that house, but not without taking my son with me. Of course, she didn't like that and threatened to file a lawsuit against me. I couldn't handle it anymore and left that same night, but not without taking my son with me. Of course, Linda didn't like that and threatened to sue me and call the police on me. Fast forward 3 or 2 days later, I'm with my son at my mother's house when I get this weird letter. I read it, and it only says 2 words: watching you. I didn't know what to say or what to do getting this weird letter, but I figured that it had to be Linda, considering she's always been a weird, suspicious creep. I don't say that as in to be mean, but to be literal. I was almost expecting that during our time in our marriage that she was following me around without me knowing. At least that's what she thought. She would sometimes put on fake wigs and follow me through malls, parking lots, and even my own workplace. I knew right then and there that I had to end things with her, but I couldn't in fear that I could ruin our child's life. So I decided to stick it out a little bit longer, but it was doing me no good. When I got this letter, I decided not to tell my mother about it, to not worry her. I thought that Linda would just give up on this little game that she's playing with me and move on. But of course, 3 months later, I do regret this decision, and maybe I should have taken it a little bit more seriously, considering this is Linda we're talking about. A couple weeks later, and nothing goes wrong. Everything seems fine, and the court proceedings are going as planned. Or so I thought. Somehow, some way, she managed to convince the judge that I was unfit to parent our child, and won the custody battle. I was completely dumbfounded, considering she had no money to her name, and I was the one with the money. Linda never worked a day in her life. She was always at home, just usually at home reading books, watching TV, or taking care of our baby. I was completely confused, but figured Linda had some part in this. I was not going to easily give up yet and decided to keep going with the trial. I got my lawyer to get on it immediately. I knew that Linda couldn't keep this up, so I decided to just wait it out a little bit to see what my lawyer can get. Nothing. My lawyer could get absolutely nothing on Linda. There was nothing to prove that she was not fit to parent, nor to prove that she was, mentally unstable. Why do I say mentally unstable? Maybe because that's what she was. I also forgot to mention of how she usually always managed to get inside of your head. She always got in minds, and it always made me feel doubts. Doubts that I could be in the wrong, but I always managed to snap myself out of it eventually. She was that totally crazy, and I needed to keep her out of my life. I knew I did, but I did not do anything for a long time. She wasn't always like this. She was a nice girl, pretty and sweet, always caring. But of course, that's usually how the predators always are, aren't they? Always putting on a fake smile just so they could catch their prey in a net and ravage them up like their dinner. Eventually, I don't know how, but my lawyer managed to find something interesting. There was a contract. A contract of what, you think? It was a contract signed by Linda to some random dude. I didn't know what it was about. He didn't tell me at first. He was hesitant. But eventually, the court looked at this, and for some reason, Linda got arrested. I was confused, so dumbfounded, but my lawyer eventually came to me and revealed what was on the contract. It was a contract between Linda and a hitman. Apparently, Linda, before winning the custody battle, was planning to kill me. She was planning to kill me because I was taking our baby away from her. I was completely shocked. I knew Linda was crazy, but this took it to a whole new extreme. I couldn't believe any of what he was telling me, as if my mind had went blank at that very moment, and my world shriveled up and died. Linda was placed in there for at least 15 years, but if she had succeeded in getting me killed, it would have been way longer. There you have it. The story of how I got away from my crazy wife. Ex-wife, I mean. I hope my son doesn't ever have to meet her, maybe because who knows the type of lies and the types of things she'll do to him when he's older. And to you, Linda, I hope we never meet again. My name is John. This story happened to me only 2 years ago. I used to be married to a woman called Jessie. Me and Jessie ended up splitting up, but I'm the one who filed the divorce. Only because Jessie was always a little too much clingy for me. And I know what you're thinking, clingy, so that means you divorce her? Well, it was a lot more deeper than that. She was also very controlling and very emotional. It got to the point where she would cut herself constantly over the littlest, tiniest things. If she made me upset or angry, she would go on a temper tantrum about how worthless she was. It got to the point where it started to scare me. Then she would talk about how much she wanted to have a family with me, and how much she wanted to have a child and do so many things. But the way that she would say it would be so intense. But before the divorce, even after all these things, I still wanted to stay with her. Now I know what you're thinking. Why stay? She was clearly not in her right mind, and that's clearly red flags all the way through the roof. Well, I understand that, but I didn't want to kick this poor woman down just because she was a little bit clingy, emotional, or even weird. but I wanted to just get out of the relationship as well. It was too much for me to handle, but I didn't know how to break it to her, considering even if I got angry or a little tiny annoyed with her, she would go crazy. Imagine breaking up with her or doing a divorce. She would freaking go AWOL and completely destroy everything around her, even herself. So I decided to stick it out for a little bit, but after a couple more years of this, I couldn't handle it any longer. She was never like this as a teenager when we were together. Me and her have been together for a very long time, all the way since middle school. We are in our 30s now, but we've been in a relationship more longer than we've been in marriage. She was always so bright, happy, and it never got to the point where she was in some dark, depressed state, to the point where she would go crazy, crying constantly and cutting herself. But of course, getting married, things tend to change, and people tend to show the more part of themselves, a part that they don't want anyone else to see. But of course, it eventually comes out. I couldn't handle it any longer, and I told her that we were through. But of course, she didn't take this lightly. She began saying that I hated her, and that I was trying to be with someone else who was way more prettier than her. Someone who didn't annoy me, and someone that I loved more than her. It was completely delusional of what she was saying. I understood that maybe she could have a mental condition, but it didn't justify what comes next. After I announced the divorce, she began to try to attack me. I didn't understand what she was doing, but I was quick on thinking and got her away from me and got out of there. Needless to say, I called the cops and she got arrested. I couldn't take any more of the shenanigans, the craziness that was ensuing in front of me. She went absolutely dog crap over just me breaking up with her. I understand that a divorce is a very difficult thing to process, but the attempts at attacking me is a whole nother level of crazy. I didn't see her for a month after she got arrested until I got a text. A text that said, "Look outside your window." I did. She was standing out there holding flowers. I was completely confused. It was so dumbfounding of how crazy she looked. She didn't look like she was taking care of herself. She looked completely freaking fragile. She looked pale, like a ghost. Her hair was so messy that for a second, by looking at it, there was no way that it could be repaired just looking at it from the human eye. She was completely just scratching herself violently, standing out there with this vacant gaze stare to it. I opened the door, and she immediately brightened up her face and ran to me, hugging me. I got her off and told her that what she was doing wasn't healthy. She told me that she came all this way to see me and found out that I was staying at a friend's place. She said, "It took her a long time to find you, but I'm finally here. I know things have changed, but I've changed too. It would be nice for us to get back together and figure out a way to fix this broken relationship." I told her that I couldn't do it and that it was too much for me to handle and that she needed to move on, but of course she did not. She told me no, that this wasn't going to end and that she would keep trying to get us back together. I told her to get off my property before I called the cops, and she did. Let me also remind you again that it wasn't even my house. That I was staying at a friend's house, but I just said that to get her out of there. A couple months later, and no sign of her, until I go out to a bar. A bar with my friend Cole. See, Cole was the friend that I was staying at, and he knew good and well about how crazy my ex was. He said, "Dude, look over there. Jesse's sitting in the back." I was completely confused, but decided to turn around. And there she was, sitting there, looking at me, with this almost crazed but lovesick stare to it, like she was a kindergarten falling in love for the first time. It was completely unnerving, the way she stared constantly, unblinking. It was so weird, to the point where I couldn't take it any longer and decided to leave. I got up and left with my friend Cole, but as we were walking out, Jessie comes outside. She runs in front of the car and stops us from getting in. She looks at us and say, "How are you boys doing tonight? Such a wonderful night, isn't it? The breeze is great, and you two look great. Now, if you excuse me, Cole, I would like to talk to my husband for a little bit." Cole said, "I don't think that's possible considering he's not your husband anymore." And she gave him a glare that meant, "I will physically hurt you if you don't move." He caught the hint and got away from me. I told Cole that it's fine and told Jessie that we were over and that this was never going to happen. She was determined though and did something unexpected. She pulled out a revolver. I thought she was joking at first, but I looked in the hole where you load the bullets and saw that it was loaded. She was completely serious and started pointing it at Cole, saying, "Cole is lying to you. He's the one who caused all of this. He's the one who broke us up together. We should go and just kill him and leave together." It was completely crazy of what she was doing. I couldn't believe it. My mouth was wide open and Cole was going to freaking scream, but I told him not to in fear that she might pull the trigger and kill him on the spot. Of course, someone outside of the bar saw this and called 911, but by the time that 911 arrived, she had shot Cole. Apparently, I wasn't looking, but when I saw the cops coming, she had pulled the trigger and shot Cole dead. Cole was gone. His blood had gotten all over me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in front of me. Eventually, the police caught up with Jessie and arrested her on the spot. She was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Me, however, couldn't really fathom what I had saw and almost went into a crazed state to the point where I had to seek therapy. I've gotten much better now, and Jessie is still locked up. She only has 14 years to go, but hopefully that time and confinement can tell her that we were over and to never do something like this again. I couldn't believe that Cole was gone. It still, to this day, makes me sick in my stomach, the blood that was on me. But of course, like I said, I've gotten much better and have a good family, so thanks to them, and thank you for listening. And to Jessie, I hope me and you never cross paths again, because if you do ever come near me again, it will not be pleasant.